let's start with our first section. That's pick your fit. And I'm actually going to go to Sahil first. Sahil,
Sure.
Cambridge is a 1 year MBA. It's a 12-month program, right? What prompted you to actually pick a 12-month program as opposed to a standard 18 or a 24-month program? Were you very clear from the first day that you always wanted a 1 year degree?
hmm Yeah, so I think there are a couple of reasons that why I took the 12 months program. So one was the ROI, because I think I didn't wanted much time off my job, so that was one of the main factors. Second, I had a pre-MBA consulting experience, so the intention was that I'll pursue consulting after MBA also. So I was pretty much clear about the path. So one advice to some incoming students would be that when they are figuring out whether it's a 12 months program or 24 months program, who's the fit for you, one of the key criteria they should think of whether you're looking for a triple jump or not. Because if you want to change your role, your industry, your geography, you actually have to test out the market and you actually see whether this new industry is fit for you. This is something which people get more chance while they pursue a 24-month MBA. While I didn't wanted to experiment that much, so I was pretty much sure that 12-month program that I want to pursue. Um, Additional thing was why Cambridge in terms of pursuing the program was, so with Cambridge it is not only the school that you are attached to, it is also a wider university, so the experience is wide. You get to understand not only the B school people, you also have interactions with different law school, finance, different accounting people, so the perspective is huge there to network. So that was also another criteria. European MBAs, I think, are more international. So my target were always the European MBAs versus the US MBAs, wherein it's a 40% international mix versus a 93 or 90 plus international mix. So yeah, broadly these were the criterias. Specifically, Cambridge was because I wanted a program which actually had less number of MBA students, because when there's a it's a close connection that you build. The networking is good with a small batch versus if you let's say go to other programs which have a 700 plus or 1,000 uh, MBAs incoming. So the networking is quite difficult in those circumstances. So broadly, these were the criteria for me to shortlist why Cambridge is a good fit for me.
Interesting take, Sahil. I think you made a very good point about ROI. So the big difference between a 2 year MBA and a 1 year MBA is that the program length reduces your ROI significantly, and the other factors that you mentioned were relating to the class size, the larger university that Cambridge offers, and gives you that international perspective because European schools offer that 80-90% plus international mix. So some very interesting points coming from Sahil. Just maybe Tripti, you could take this one. Some of the points that Sahil mentioned holds true for some of the other universities in UK as well, right? So UK
Right.
has a lot of other top notch MBA colleges, and if I could pick
Yeah.
one of them, Oxford for instance, is quite identical to some of the criteria that Sahil mentioned. It is associated to a
Right.
larger university. It is a 1 year program. It has that international mix. So how difficult was it, or what were the differentiating factors for you per se? And maybe Sahil, you could add on to Tripti's answer once she is completed. What were the factors you were evaluating when differentiating between Oxford and Cambridge? Only these two I'm taking because we're talking about UK, but if you were also evaluating some other universities, you could also add a perspective on that.
Right. So my story is like at the complete other end of the spectrum from Sahil because I have a background in financial services and I actually want to move slightly away from that into a more strategy kind of a role. So the reason I picked Cambridge maybe over some of the other schools is because they have a concentration-based approach. So they have about I think 9 concentrations, and you can pick those. And I felt that that would be a very structured way to kind of chart my movement from say financial services to something else. That was one. There were two more. The other was that it has more of a what they call an experiential learning. So every term you have a project which is with a live company, And I thought that that would also give me the kind of hands-on experience which I haven't got before to, figure out what I really want to do. Of course, I know I want to go into a strategy kind of a role, but what kind of strategy, which industry, all of those things. So I defer a little with Sahil because, he said that it's probably better for people who really know what they want to do. But I thought that these experiences will give me a nice chance to figure out what I want to do. Maybe open, after speaking to some of the seniors that we have or alumni, what they said is they came across a couple of things during the project which they never knew existed or they never thought that they would like as well. So that was another reason. And I think the last reason was because Cambridge is very close to, or it's part of the Silicon Pen ecosystem, which is like the UK Silicon Valley, right? So I am not especially interested in tech, but we cannot deny the fact that that's where the world is going. And I wanted some exposure to tech just from a perspective of being able to understand parts of it. I don't want to be a coder or anything, but I want to be able to understand it enough that I can speak to a coder tomorrow, right? Like I can be the person who speaks to business and the coder or something like that. So I wanted to kind of get a flavor of that as well. And I think that was one of the bigger differentiation factors between Oxford, because Oxford is more humanities based and Cambridge is more tech based. So yeah, those were my reasons.
I think it's always great to get very fresh and different perspectives, and it happens when people come from varied backgrounds. So one great thing that you mentioned is that you actually looked into the concentrations that Cambridge offered and how that differed from, say, a college like Oxford or maybe other one-year programs. Plus, you also mentioned the importance of the location, right? Because Cambridge, as I said, is placed where it's literally placed at the same length or same place where it could actually, it feels like it's the Silicon Valley of UK. And you mentioned that we are moving towards a world that's more tech friendly. So you want to be a part of that. You want to immerse yourself in a culture like that, which is great to hear. Sahil, moving on to you. UK has now done something very interesting, which is they've extended the post-study work visa, right? And the rationale, I'm sure, is to attract more and more students, and especially what has happened post Brexit, there, right? How do you see the UK schools or the UK market evolving from this decision? What changes do you think would happen this year and in the years to come?
I think obviously this decision of extending this post-study visa from, let's say, 6 months to actually 2 years, it's a good decision. Obviously, many students that were quite apprehensive about the job conditions, whether they'll be able to convert a particular job given the COVID scenario also. So these in a way plays a ripple effect, and people tend to do away with, okay, I do not want to do study in UK, rather let me go to another geography like France, which offers the same set of 2 year post-study visa. So obviously this will play a good role. People would be more interested in UK it as an education hub. But personally, for me, when I was shortlisting different programs, this law wasn't there at that. It was still in contention, but it wasn't a formal decision made on out of it. So for me, it was never a question to actually see whether it's a 6 months or it's a 3 months versus a 2 year, because what I believe was these schools are basically top schools, and the brand which you are associated with is too huge to actually be apprehensive about that you are not gonna get a job. You will definitely get a job. It's just about the your selection in terms of whether you are able to get your dream job versus a job that you have to just settle. So that was my perception when I was applying for UK.
So if
Absolutely.
you don't mind,
Yeah, please
I'd
go on.
just like to chime in here because this did weigh in my decision making. So as Sahil mentioned, it wasn't really a law by then. But from person, not from my personal experience, but from my friend's experience, a couple of years back, he was in the UK to study, and at that point in time, they had reduced the post-study, staying number of months to 4, and I saw the kind of struggles that he went through. Of course, his university was different, and it wasn't the same brand name and all of those things. But that was a bit scary. So when I heard that the UK is changing it or is contemplating changing it, I did increase the number of UK schools that I was going to apply to as compared to what it was before. Because just like Sahil, I was very sure I wanted to be in Europe, but yeah, I did increase that number. So that's the impact it had on me.
Sure. I think going back to what Abhinav said, right? It's interesting how between the two of you, both of you are representing two different diverse set of opinions, and that is the idea of an MBA, right? You want to interact and be in a class which is coming from different backgrounds and a different perspective. And very interesting to know that Sahil had a different take and you had a different take. But for the viewers out there, I would probably just take a couple of seconds to summarize. UK has recently amended their laws, and now if you're completing master's level or even undergrad level degree from certain certified universities, you're allowed to stay there for 2 more years and look for a job, which was not the case till just a few months back, and which reflected in the applications. I remember reading some articles a few months back that just in the course of 4-5 months, UK saw applications go up by 90% or something. Please don't hold me to the number, but the interest is definitely showing in the numbers, and people who are evaluating foreign B schools and European B schools, something for you to consider for sure. Going back to you, Tripti, and maybe it's slightly related to the visa part of it. Brexit has been a talking point for a couple of years now, right? And I was just talking to someone the other day, and the opinion that I was hearing was it's going to help particularly Indians a lot, and maybe Asian community also, because now after the Brexit, essentially all Europeans outside of the Britishers would be on the same level playing field as Indians or any other international student, right?
Right.
Do you think that is also going to help an immigrant to find a job, and his competitiveness in the job market would be better off vis-a-vis what it was a few months back? And this Brexit point is a two-sided situation, right? It's a double-edged sword. While it is helping probably helping, if I could use the word and add a disclaimer there, the job markets and the economy is there's some questions around it. How are you tackling the Brexit uncertainty, if I could ask you that?
Yeah. So, okay, so my work experience has primarily been in the European region. So I used to work very closely with folks who were based out of London, Milan, Paris, etc. And we had one of our meetings with the larger group when the Brexit announcement came through, and I've actually seen people cry and be really upset about it. But over the last 2 years, and that this drama has actually played out, people have started weighing their options. So I could see a lot of the European folks start thinking of moving to continental offices, so continental Europe. So yeah, I mean, on a ground level, it does seem like people are trying to move back to their home country, or at least to the continental part of Europe, because there is a bit of lack of clarity in terms of what is really going to happen to their jobs, or will they be at the same footing as us? How is it going to work? So I have actually seen that movement happening. Now the question is, how many jobs will get really replaced versus how many of them will get relocated? Because the company that I was working closely with, they actually moved their headquarters for Europe to Dublin. So is this something on paper? Is this something that's really going to turn out? It's not very easy to answer that. I am inherently a little optimistic in general, so I thought maybe this is a good opportunity. And whereas the job market is concerned, whether it's like COVID or Brexit or whatever, the way I am trying to, get better sleep at night is by thinking that, look, we're in a place where everything is super uncertain, right? Like until last year, we were talking about the climate emergency, and that was uncertain. The social inequality part, that's uncertain. So, as people in business, eventually we're going to have to deal with a lot of uncertainty. And the way I am justifying this to myself is, if I can deal with this right now, I'm sure I can, deal with it once I actually get a job, I grow, and I hopefully someday become a leader. And, it's kind of practice, like training wheels for it. So that's how I'm looking at it.
I think it's an excellent point that you mentioned, that the number of jobs which are going to remain in UK versus the jobs which are going to be located somewhere else, right? So as you mentioned, headquarters being moved to Dublin, and we've also seen some of the banks being moved to Germany now, the headquarters, right? But then still, the optimism remains because there's so many other sectors which are just growing, and especially the startup space, the tech space is growing insanely in UK, and it's probably the biggest market in whole of Europe. So even I think I would agree with the optimism that you shared that people who are going to UK, I personally feel that the job market is going to be stable and it's only going to work in their favor because of the changes in the law which have been made. Great. So I think this has been a great section and brings us to